Now, whenever you do a ping sweep or a port scan, you're going to generate a signature that can be picked up by an intrusion detection system. Somebody using packet capturing software like Snort or Ethereal. And that signature, think about it. You're slowly going up different IP addresses or methodically going up IP addresses in a network so they can look at the field data, the source field and destination field at layer 3, the TCP IP, or they can look at the source and destination field data at layer 2, the MAC address, and realize that a ping sweep is being carried out on their network. And then they can track it back to your source IP because by default, when you're running Nmap, whatever you're using for your pings and ICMP traffic, it's going to tack on your IP address as the source IP that it came from. So one of the things you might want to do is specify a decoy or spoof an IP of a valid host or server on the network. And that sometimes can fool an intrusion detection system into thinking that that ping sweep or that port scan is coming from a system on its own network, and maybe even a system that it trusts. So to do that, I need to use sudo, and I'm going to use Nmap. I'm going to specify lowercase s, capital S to do a port scan this time. I'm going to do 199.207.13. Let me see what we have here. I'm going to do my iPod. Let me see. I'm trying to remember what my iPod IP was. The last it was 17. The last time I did a ping sweep. So I'm going to check my jailbroken iPod here. And I'm going to use the -D option for a decoy or to spoof an IP. And I'm going to use the IP of a valid server on the network, so 199.207.13.13. And that was my cat Sparky. Alright, and so my jailbroken iPod is looks like it's pretty secure there. Or 17. Try that one more time. Spoofing an IP here. Cat seems to approve. And it's scanning, still completing the port scan. Okay. Interesting ports. 908 closed ports. There's a state service, in this case, for iTunes, the iPhone sync service on the iPod. And it is jailbroken. So 22 for a secure shell. That's a useful feature when you jailbreak it. And let me look at one more. That was the iPod, the jailbroken iPod. Let me look at my Linux cell phone. And again, I'll just spoof an IP, so do a port scan on that. And going through, and 1,000 ports scanned, and they're all closed. So my Linux phone's pretty secure, pretty locked down there. Here's an XP machine that I found on my network. And again, just sudo nmap. I'm going to do a port scan just to figure out what services are running on this XP machine. And I discovered it's 199.207.13.12 is the IP address. Alright, I'm going to initiate my port scan. And looking at that, I've gleaned some information. 995 closed ports, but the ones that are open are quite interesting. And actually, like 137 to 139, that's pretty much net bias. So I know that there are some shares there, some network shares I might want to look at. In this case, from 445, that just sort of makes it compatible with Active Directory. It's still part of NetBIOS, but Microsoft's new implementation of that with Active Directory. This is interesting. I can see there's a VNC server running. And that's for remote access or remote connection. So again, if I were gathering information along with the MAC address and the IP address and the host name, that would give me a lot of information about things I might want to try to exploit on that particular host. So I'm ping sweeping and port scanning and just looking at different bits and pieces of information I can gather on the network. One of the useful things to know is which operating system a particular IP address is, a host. And not always, but sometimes you can glean that information with the -O option with Nmap. So I'm going to try that. Sudo -Nmap -O, that's the switch option. And let's try to grab the operating system. So I'm going to try 199.207.13.12. Okay. And I noted that that's Microsoft Windows XP. And actually it is Service Pack 3 there. No, it's not 100% sure. It uses a combination of techniques on a port scan to try to figure out, to try to basically pinpoint the host operating system by a signature, but I know within the ballpark there that I know that that's XP. Let's try a few more of these. Never tried this. I'm going to try this with an Android tablet, and I know just from ping sweeping and port scanning that was Android. I was able to get an Arcos. I know it's an Arcos Internet tablet or Android tablet there. Okay, and Android is Linux, and notice it's running Linux, and here's the kernel version, 2.6 something. Not quite sure, but we know that it's 2.6 something, 2.6.9, just 2.6.28, one hop. And again, if I were to just specify this as a normal port scan, I'm going to just port scan a particular host. Notice it's an Arcos. So I know it's Android, I know it's an Internet tablet, and I even know now the Android, what version of the Linux kernel that Android tablet is using. Now I haven't been able to get much on my Linux phone. It's running Mamo and Debian and Android. It's a triple boot on the cell phone. Let's see if I can get any information on the cell phone. And again, I'm just going to use the -O option, and I know from ping sweeping and port scanning that my phone was 19 on this network. And okay, yeah, it's pretty locked down, pretty secure there. And last, let's see if we can find something interesting here. We had found, remember we found it registered as an iPhone, but I know it's an iPod because I don't have an iPhone. All I have is a jailbroken iPod. And right now, I know that its IP, based on what it was identified as, was 17 when I did the ping sweep. So again, if I did this, I can, here's the secure self server. It's jailbroken, so I can log in iPhone sync with iTunes. So let me try that with the -O option, -O, and see if there's any other bits or pieces of information we might glean about that jailbroken iPod. Okay, and notice it's given us Leopard and Darwin and Apple Mac OS 10. In 10.5 here, so Leopard, not Snow Leopard, but this is the signature that it's generating, along with the MAC address and some interesting ports here for iTunes. And Secure Shell is definitely an interesting port in terms of thinking of possible exploits against that jailbroken iPod. Not sure what is on there that's valuable, but I guess if we wanted to. So just looking at Nmap and some different command line switch options. Now, what about, remember we were talking previously about maybe piggybacking a scan over port 80 if ICMP or other kinds of traffic were being blocked? Let's take a look at that. I'm going to try one of those. So sudo nmap, just to use some of these different switch options. I'm going to specify a port in this case, the -P switch, and I'm going to go ahead and specify to use capital O, and 199.207.13, let me do 17. And let me see. There, let's relaunch that there. Okay, and I got the MAC address, and it's picking it up as an Apple iPhone. Alright. And FreeBSD, it's not quite sure, but it's actually an iPod. That's just running at through port 80. So, again, a few more bits and pieces of information, but there were just too many fingerprints running over port 80. And finally, if you want to look at, just to list all the switches, just use nmap-h. So let me clear this, and I'm going to do nmap-h. Just to list some of the switches and things. You look at all the different possibilities. Oh, the possibilities with nmap. The switches.